The observation chamber aboard the UES Horizon hummed with an almost musical resonance as Lieutenant Nadia Patel studied the being before her. Through the one-way glass, she observed their latest captive, a warrior of the Centauri Collective, whose crystalline skin reflected the harsh lighting in mesmerizing patterns of deep purple and midnight blue. Vexthor, as their intelligence suggested he was called, sat motionless in the restraint chair. Unlike human prisoners who might struggle or show signs of distress, he maintained an almost meditative stillness that made Nadia's skin prickle with unease. The only movement came from the occasional ripple of color across his crystalline surface, a physiological response unique to his species that their xenobiologists were still trying to decode. "Lieutenant," the voice of Admiral Harrison crackled through her earpiece. "Initial approach is approved. Remember the protocol. They're designed for war. Don't let that stillness fool you." Nadia touched her throat mic. "Understood, sir. But I still believe my approach will work better than traditional methods." She didn't add that 3 other interrogators had already failed, their aggressive techniques only resulting in silence and those mesmerizing color ripples. The door whispered open as Nadia entered, carrying nothing but a small device that their scientists had developed. A crystalline resonator that mimicked the frequencies of Centauri communication. She placed it carefully on the table between them. "I know you can understand me," she said softly, noting how the colors across his skin shifted slightly at the sound of her voice. "And I'm not here to hurt you." Vexthor's head tilted, almost imperceptibly. The movement sent cascades of light dancing across the walls. When he spoke, his voice was like wind through crystal chimes. "Pain would be preferable to your deception, human." Nadia sat down across from him, maintaining eye contact with those faceted organs that served as eyes. "No deception. I'm here to understand." She activated the resonator, and a gentle harmony filled the room. The same frequency as Centauri lullabies, according to their research. The warrior's surface rippled with colors she hadn't seen before, soft amber and pale green. You know our songs." For the first time, uncertainty crept into his crystalline voice. "We've been studying your people, yes, but not for the reasons you might think." Nadia leaned forward slightly. "We know about the Nexus control. We know your people aren't fighting this war by choice." The colors across Vexthor's surface suddenly went dark, almost black. "You understand nothing, human. The Nexus is our salvation, our unity, our purpose." "Is it?" Nadia asked gently. "Or is it your prison?" She adjusted the resonator's frequency slightly, and the harmony changed to something more complex. A warrior's marching song, but slowed down, transformed into something almost mournful. Vexthor's surface erupted in a chaos of colors she couldn't interpret. "Stop," he whispered, but there was something in his voice beyond anger now. Something that sounded almost like longing. "Your people were artists once," Nadia continued, her voice soft but firm. "Before the Nexus, we found your ancient ruins, your crystal gardens that sang with the solar winds. The Nexus didn't give you purpose, it took it away." "You lie," Vexthor said, but the colors rippling across his surface told a different story. Patches of deep blue, uncertainty, their xenobiologists suggested, mixed with flashes of gold that they'd never seen before. "I can prove it to you," Nadia said, reaching slowly into her pocket. She withdrew a small crystal, recovered from one of those ancient ruins. As she held it up, it caught the light and seemed to sing with its own inner harmony. Vexthor's entire form shuddered, and for a moment, his crystalline surface became almost transparent. Through it, Nadia could see something she hadn't expected, a core of swirling colors that pulsed like a heart. "How?" His voice was barely a whisper now. "How do you have that?" "Because we've been trying to understand you, Vexthor. Not to destroy you, but to free you. The Nexus control can be broken. We found a way. But we need your help." The colors across his surface slowly settled into a steady pulse of deep purple mixed with gold. When he spoke again, His voice carried a weight she hadn't heard before. Freedom. I had forgotten what that word meant. Nadia stood slowly, deactivating the resonator but leaving it on the table between them. Think about it. I'll return tomorrow, and you can decide then. Remain a weapon of the Nexus, or help us restore your people to what they once were. As she turned to leave, his voice stopped her. Lieutenant, the song. Could you leave it playing? Nadia smiled slightly, reactivating the resonator. As she left the room, the ancient crystal melodies filled the space, and through the observation window, she watched as Vexthor's surface began to shimmer with colors that hadn't been seen in his species for centuries. Admiral Harrison's voice crackled in her ear again. Well done, Lieutenant. But do you really think he'll help us? Nadia watched as the colors across Vexthor's surface settled into a steady rhythm that matched the resonator's harmony perfectly. Yes, sir. Because sometimes the greatest act of warfare is showing someone they don't have to fight anymore. The next morning aboard the UES Horizon, Nadia found herself facing an entirely different Vexthor. The crystalline warrior's surface no longer held its martial rigidity. Instead, it flowed with subtle currents of color, like an aurora dancing across a night sky. The resonator had played through the night, its ancient melodies working changes she hadn't dared hope for. You didn't sleep, she observed, noting the slight fluctuations in his core luminescence. We don't sleep as you do. Vexthor responded, his voice carrying harmonics she hadn't heard before. But I remembered. The resonator's songs awakened patterns I thought the Nexus had erased. Nadia pulled up her chair, closer this time. Tell me about these patterns. The colors across his surface shifted to deep indigo shot through with silver. Before the Nexus, we were not warriors. We were harmonists. Our cities were living symphonies, each crystal being adding their own note to the greater song. His voice took on a timbre that made the observation windows vibrate slightly. The Nexus didn't just conquer us, it silenced us. But not completely, Nadia said softly, reaching for the ancient crystal she'd shown him yesterday. Otherwise, this wouldn't affect you as it does. Vexthor's surface rippled with something that might have been pain or longing. The Nexus cannot completely override our core resonance. It can only suppress it, force it into patterns of war instead of harmony. That's why you're here, Vexthor. We need to understand how the suppression works. If we can reverse it, you would unleash chaos, he interrupted, colors flashing stormy gray. The Nexus maintains order across 12 star systems, billions of my kind, all singing the same war song. If you break that harmony, it was never harmony, Nadia countered, her voice firm but gentle. It was enforced unison. There's a difference. She reached for the resonator, adjusting its frequencies. The new melody that emerged was complex, multilayered, a recreation of what their archaeologists had discovered in the ruins of Centauri concert halls. Vexthor's surface erupted in swirls of gold and violet. This was how we lived, he whispered, his crystalline form vibrating in sympathy with the music. Each voice unique, each harmony building on the others to create something greater than ourselves. And it can be that way again, Nadia said, laying her cards on the table. Literally. She spread out holographic projections showing their research, their discoveries, their theories about the Nexus's control frequencies. The Nexus uses quantum entanglement to maintain its control, she explained. But your natural resonances are actually more complex than its enforced patterns. We believe we can use that complexity. Use your own ancestral harmonies to break its hold. Vexthor studied the projections, his surface shifting through colors Nadia had never seen before. You understand more than you should, he said finally. How? Because humanity has faced its own versions of the Nexus, Nadia replied. Thinking of Earth's long history of tyranny and resistance, we know that control is never as complete as it appears. There are always frequencies that escape the pattern, songs that refuse to be silenced. She stood and walked to the observation window, gesturing at the stars beyond. Right now, The Centauri Collective is expanding, consuming everything in its path. Not because your people want to, but because the Nexus demands it. How long before it decides Earth must join its grand symphony? You fear us, Vexthor observed. No, Nadia turned back to him. We fear for you, and we're offering you a choice that the Nexus never did. The colors across Vexthor's surface slowly settled into a steady pulse of deep blue and gold. If we were to attempt this, the risks would be immense. Breaking the Nexus's control would cause a psychic shock that could drive many of my people mad. We've thought of that. Nadia activated another hologram, showing a massive space station under construction. We call it the Harmony Sphere, a safe place where we can gradually introduce the counter-frequencies, help your people remember who they were before the Nexus. Not all at once, but in waves, like ripples in a pond. Vexthor's surface suddenly went completely transparent, revealing his core, pulsing now with a rhythm that perfectly matched the ancient music still playing from the resonator. You would do this for us, knowing we have been your enemies. We do it because you never chose to be our enemies, Nadia replied. And because we believe the universe needs your true song, not the Nexus' pale imitation of it. For a long moment, Vexthor was silent, his surface slowly shifting through every color she had seen and some she hadn't. When he finally spoke, his voice carried harmonics that made the very air seem to crystallize. Show me, he said. Show me everything you know about breaking the Nexus's control. And then I will show you how to turn its own frequencies against it. Nadia smiled, feeling the first real hope since this war began. Together then. The colors across Vexthor's surface settled into a pattern she would later learn meant dawn after darkness. Together, he agreed. Let us remake the symphony. The Harmony Sphere's construction bay floated in the void between Earth and Luna, its partially completed structure resembling a massive crystalline snowflake. Lieutenant Nadia Patel stood at the viewport of the observation deck, watching as construction drones wove energy fields and crystalline lattices into intricate patterns based on Vexthor's guidance. The resonance chambers are nearly complete. Vexthor's harmonious voice came from behind her. In the 3 weeks since he'd agreed to help, they'd removed his restraints, though he was still monitored. His crystalline form now flowed with colors that seemed more natural, more alive than when they first captured him. And the containment fields? Nadia asked, turning to face him. Will they hold when we begin broadcasting the counter-frequencies? Vexthor's surface rippled with shades of amber, his equivalent of thoughtfulness. They should. But Nadia, there's something I haven't told you. Something about the Nexus that your scientists haven't discovered. Nadia felt a chill run down her spine. What is it? The Nexus. It's not just a control system. It's alive. Or rather, it's a crystalline consciousness that emerged from my people's experiments with harmonic resonance centuries ago. We didn't submit to it. It grew within us, like a crystal forming in a solution. Nadia's hand instinctively went to the resonator at her belt. You mean it's some kind of collective consciousness? More than that. It's what we might have become naturally, over millions of years of evolution. But it forced the process, corrupted it, turned our harmonies into weapons, our songs into chains. Its surface darkened with storms of deep purple and black. And it knows I'm here. What? Nadia stepped closer, alarm racing through her. How? The connection goes both ways, Nadia. While it can control us, we can also sense it. And last night, during my rest cycle, I felt it probing, searching. It knows something is interfering with its frequencies. Warning klaxons suddenly blared through the station. Nadia rushed to the nearest console, her heart pounding. Multiple Centauri vessels just emerged from hyperspace. They're on an attack vector. Vexthor's surface erupted in swirls of crimson and gold. The Nexus sent them. It knows what we're planning. He moved to the console, his crystalline fingers dancing over the controls. But it's made a mistake. The ships it sent, they're all equipped with harmonic amplifiers. The same technology we're building into the harmony sphere, Nadia realized. But we're not ready. The resonance chambers aren't properly tuned. Then we'll have to tune them in combat. Vex Thor's voice took on a harmonic she'd never heard before, something between a war cry and a symphony. The Nexus thinks it can use our own weapons against us. Let's show it what true harmony can do. Nadia hit the station-wide comm. All personnel to battle stations. This is not a drill. And get me Admiral Harrison. The next few hours were chaos. The Centauri ships launched their attack, their crystalline weapons sending destructive harmonics through space. But Vex Thor worked frantically with the human engineers, turning the half-completed harmony sphere into something new, not just a rehabilitation center, but a weapon of liberation. The frequency modulators are online, Nadia reported, her fingers flying over the controls. But if we broadcast the counter frequencies now, the resonance chambers will probably shatter, Vex Thor finished, along with half the station's crystalline infrastructure. His surface pulsed with determination. But we don't have a choice. The Nexus knows now. It will never give us another chance. Nadia looked at him, seeing not an alien warrior but a friend, a partner in something greater than either of them. Your people on those ships, what will this do to them? It will hurt, he said softly. But it will be a healing pain, like setting a broken bone, or, his colors shifted to a gentle blue, like remembering who you really are after a long nightmare. Admiral Harrison's voice crackled over the comm. Lieutenant, we're picking up more Centauri signatures entering the system. Whatever you're going to do it now. Nadia met Vex Thor's faceted gaze. Together, his surface blazed with all the colors she'd come to know. Determination, hope, fear, and something deeper, something that made her heart race. Together, they activated the Harmony Sphere's broadcast array. The counter-frequencies erupted from the station like visible waves of sound, rippling through space in expanding circles of crystalline light. The effect on the attacking ships was immediate and stunning. The Centauri vessels stopped firing. Their crystalline hulls began to pulse with colors, not the regulated patterns of the Nexus, but wild, beautiful symphonies of individual expression. Through the viewport, Nadia watched as ship after ship transformed from weapons of war into works of art. It's working, she breathed. They're remembering. But Vex Thor's surface had gone almost completely transparent, a sign of intense concentration or pain. The Nexus, it's fighting back, trying to reassert control. I can feel it. He stumbled, and Nadia caught him, feeling the vibrations running through his crystalline form. Stay with me, she urged. Focus on my voice, on who you really are. His voice was strained with harmonics that made the viewport crack. I am not a weapon. I am a song. We are all songs. The counter-frequencies reached their peak, and for a moment, space itself seemed to sing. The harmony sphere's crystalline structure groaned under the strain, but held. And in that moment of crisis, something extraordinary happened. The Centauri ships began to sing back. The aftermath of the first broadcast transformed the space around Earth into a crystalline aurora. The liberated Centauri ships hung in orbit like massive prisms, their surfaces rippling with colors that told stories of awakening and remembrance. But aboard the Harmony Sphere, Vex Thor's condition was deteriorating. Nadia hadn't left the medical bay in 3 days. She watched as human doctors and xenobiologists struggled to understand what was happening to him. His crystalline form had become increasingly unstable, shifting between transparency and opacity in irregular pulses. The connection goes both ways, he had said. Now they were learning exactly what that meant. His core resonance is fracturing, Dr. Rodriguez reported, studying readings that seemed to change by the second. It's like he's caught between two symphonies, the Nexus's war song and his own natural frequency. He's fighting for all of them, Nadia said softly, placing her hand against the crystalline barrier that contained him, taking the brunt of the Nexus's backlash so the others can break free. Through the barrier, Vexthor's colors shifted weakly into patterns she recognized. Acknowledgement, determination, and something else she was only beginning to understand. His voice, when it came, was barely a whisper of harmonics. "The Nexus is afraid," he managed. "For the first time in centuries, it knows fear. Because we've shown it can be broken." Nadia pressed closer to the barrier. "Save your strength. We can." "No." His colors intensified briefly. "You need to know. The Nexus is gathering its forces. All across the 12 systems, it's pulling its ships into defensive formations. But that's not the real danger." A shudder ran through his form, sending cascades of discordant colors across his surface. "It's going to try to remake itself. To evolve again, using the combined resonance of all those it still controls. If it succeeds, it will be stronger than ever." Nadia finished, her mind racing. "How long do we have?" "Hours, maybe. I can feel the harmonics building." His surface went almost completely dark, then flared with sudden intensity. "But there's a way. The Nexus power comes from unity. Billions of voices forced to sing the same song. But true harmony comes from difference," Nadia said, remembering their earliest conversations. "From individual voices choosing to sing together." "Yes." Vexthor's form stabilized slightly, colors flowing more naturally. "The counter-frequencies we used, they weren't strong enough, because they were just recordings, echoes of what we once were. But if we could create new harmonies, combining Centauri resonance with human rhythms." Dr. Rodriguez stepped forward. "The quantum readings we're getting from your core, they're similar to the patterns we see in human brainwaves during deep emotional states. If we could somehow synchronize—" "It would kill him," another scientist interrupted. "The energy required to broadcast a harmony that powerful." Nadia felt her heart skip. "There has to be another way." "There isn't." Vexthor's voice was stronger now, filled with a crystalline certainty that made the medical equipment hum. "My core is already failing. But if I can use what's left of my connection to the Nexus, channel it through your human equipment, through your—" His colors shifted to that deep, unnamed shade that made her pulse race. "Through your rhythms, your emotions, your music. I won't let you sacrifice yourself," Nadia said fiercely. His surface rippled with what might have been laughter. "You humans, always thinking in terms of sacrifice. This isn't an ending, Nadia. It's a transformation, a new kind of harmony." Before she could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. Admiral Harrison's voice came over the comm. "Multiple Centauri fleets detected entering the system, much bigger than last time. They'll be in range in 2 hours." Vexthor's colors pulsed with urgency. "The Nexus knows what we're planning. It's trying to stop us before." His form convulsed suddenly, colors shattering into chaos. "His core resonance is collapsing," Dr. Rodriguez shouted, rushing to adjust equipment. "The Nexus is attacking him directly through the quantum link." Nadia made her decision. "Open the barrier." "Lieutenant, the containment field is the only thing keeping his form stable." "Open it." Her voice cracked with authority. "If we're going to do this, we do it now. Together." The barrier dissolved. Nadia stepped forward as Vexthor's crystalline form began to lose cohesion, spreading like liquid light. She reached out, letting the crystalline energy flow around her hands, up her arms, feeling the vibrations of an alien song merge with her human heartbeat. "The broadcast array," she managed to say through the overwhelming sensation. "Route everything through the main chamber. All power, all frequencies." Her voice took on harmonics that shouldn't have been possible from human vocal cords. "Let's show the Nexus what real harmony sounds like." The harmony sphere's main chamber had become a symphony of light and sound. Crystalline energy swirled around Nadia like a living aurora. Vexthor's consciousness intertwined with hers in ways that defied human understanding. Through their merged awareness, she could feel everything. The approaching Centauri fleets, the desperate pulse of the Nexus as it tried to maintain control, and billions of crystalline beings across 12 star systems, their suppressed songs straining to break free. Ready for full power broadcast, Dr. Rodriguez's voice seemed to come from a great distance. Lieutenant Patel, Nadia, are you still with us? Nadia tried to speak, but what emerged was a harmony of human voice and crystalline resonance. We are here. All of us. Through their shared consciousness, Vexthor's presence rippled with both strength and gentleness. The Nexus is reaching its critical point. It's trying to force complete synchronization across all its subjects. If it succeeds, it won't. Nadia's determination merged with his, creating new frequencies that made the station's crystalline architecture sing in response. Because we're going to give them a choice. Not your song, not mine, but everything. Every possible harmony. The approaching Centauri fleet entered weapons range. Their crystalline ships pulsed with the Nexus-enforced rhythm, a cold, mechanical perfection that tried to deny the beauty of chaos and choice. Broadcasting now, Admiral Harrison announced. All frequencies, maximum power. The merged consciousness of human and Centauri reached out through the Harmony Sphere's arrays. But instead of the counter-frequencies they'd used before, what emerged was something entirely new. Human emotions, love, hope, defiance, joy, translated into crystalline harmonies. Centauri songs interpreted through the rhythms of a human heartbeat. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. The first wave of Centauri ships shuddered as the broadcast reached them. Their rigid formations began to break apart, not in chaos, but in a dance of individual expression. Colors rippled across their hulls, not the synchronized patterns of the Nexus, but billions of unique songs finally given voice. Through their connection, Nadia felt Vexthor's joy and pain as the Nexus's control began to shatter across all 12 systems. It's beautiful, she whispered in harmonics. They're all awakening. But the Nexus fought back with desperate intensity. Its enforced frequencies slammed through the quantum link, trying to reassert control. Nadia felt Vexthor's consciousness begin to fragment under the assault. Stay with me, she pleaded, holding tighter to their connection. We're so close. I'm trying. His voice was strained, colors fracturing. But the Nexus, it's trying to reconfigure itself, to absorb this new harmony we've created. Nadia felt it too. The vast crystalline consciousness of the Nexus attempting to adapt, to turn their weapon of liberation into a tool of even greater control. But in doing so, it made a critical mistake. It's opening itself to us, she realized, trying to understand our connection, to replicate it. Yes, Vexthor's presence strengthened as he understood. And in trying to understand, it has to experience it, Nadia finished. Their merged consciousness reached out, not to fight the Nexus, but to share with it everything they had discovered together. The beauty of difference, the strength of choice, the harmony that comes not from enforced unity, but from billions of individual songs choosing to sing together. The Nexus, that vast crystalline intelligence that had controlled the Centauri for centuries, experienced for the first time what it had been trying to suppress: the full spectrum of emotion, of individual expression, of love freely given instead of obedience commanded. Throughout the 12 systems, the change rippled out like waves in a cosmic ocean. The rigid harmonies of control dissolved, replaced by a vast, beautiful chaos of individual songs. Centauri ships, buildings, even their crystalline bodies began to pulse with colors unique to each being, yet somehow creating patterns more complex and beautiful than anything the Nexus had enforced. In the Harmony Sphere's main chamber, the swirling energy that had been Vexthor began to coalesce back into his crystalline form. Nadia felt their consciousness slowly separating, but the connection remained, transformed into something deeper than either of them had imagined possible. The Nexus, she managed to ask as her awareness returned to normal. Is it? Not destroyed. Vexthor's voice was weak but clear, his colors flowing in patterns she could now read like poetry. Transformed. It's becoming what it should have been all along. Not a controller, but a connector. A way for all our songs to share harmony while remaining uniquely ourselves. Through the station's viewports, they watched as the Centauri fleet rearranged itself into a new configuration, not a military formation, but an artistic expression of newfound freedom. Similar reports began flowing in from across the 12 systems as a civilization rediscovered its soul. We should thank it, in a way, Vex Thor said softly, his form still shimmering with echoes of their merger. The Nexus sought perfect harmony through control, but in doing so, it created the circumstances for us to discover what real harmony means. Nadia smiled, feeling the lingering resonance of their connection humming in her bones. And what does it mean? His color shifted to that deep, beautiful shade that needed no translation. It means choosing to sing together, even when we're singing different songs. Around them, the harmony sphere pulsed with new purpose, no longer a weapon or a rehabilitation center, but a place where humans and Centauri could learn each other's songs, creating harmonies that would echo across the stars for generations to come.